Something was wrong in Salem. Not the kind of wrong you could see or touch, but something that spread quietly, like smoke slipping through the walls. It began with children, girls who screamed in the night, who twisted and convulsed without warning, who claimed unseen hands were choking them, pulling them, tormenting them from the shadows. No wounds, no marks, no explanation, only fear. And in a town where the devil was as real as God, fear didn't stay contained for long. Because when the suffering couldn't be explained, it had to be blamed on someone. And once a name was spoken, once a finger was pointed, something shifted. Neighbors stopped trusting neighbors. Whispers replaced conversation. Eyes lingered a little too long. The air itself began to change. This wasn't just panic. It was something far more dangerous. Because in Salem, fear didn't just spread, it hunted. And before it was over, it would turn an entire town against itself. What happened in Salem was never really about witches. No spells, no dark rituals hidden in the woods, no secret covens whispering in the night. That's what they believed. But belief is a dangerous thing. Because once people are convinced something is real, they stop asking if it is. And in Salem, that certainty would become a weapon. By the winter of 1692, Salem Village was already a place under strain. A small Puritan community, isolated, rigid, and deeply suspicious of anything that didn't fit its narrow world. Life here was not easy. Winters were long and unforgiving. Food was scarce, work was constant, and beneath it all, there were fractures. Old grudges between families, arguments over land and power, quiet resentment that never truly disappeared, only waited. The church stood at the center of everything. It dictated how people lived, how they behaved, what they feared. And above all else, they feared the devil. Not as a story, not as a symbol, but as a real force, watching, waiting, influencing the world around them. To the people of Salem, evil wasn't distant, it was personal. It could live next door, sit across from you in church, or walk beside you, unnoticed. All it needed was a way in. It started with two girls. Strange behavior at first. Twitches, screams, fits with no explanation. Doctors examined them and found nothing. No illness, no injury, nothing. Yet the girls insisted they were being attacked. Invisible hands, shadowy figures, spirits that whispered and pushed and dragged them into darkness. The town's fear filled the gaps that reason couldn't reach. Whispers spread. Bewitched. And once that word was spoken, it had power. A name had to be chosen. Someone had to be blamed. Neighbors began watching each other. Fingers pointed. Families whispered behind closed doors. In Salem, accusation itself became contagious. By the time the town realized the girls' claims were serious, the machinery was already in motion. What began as unusual behavior was now the seed of mass hysteria. And in the shadows of this small village, fear was growing teeth. Once the first accusations were made, they didn't stop. It began with Tituba, the slave, an easy target. Then Sarah Good, a beggar. Then women who simply didn't fit the town's rigid mold. Each accusation carried weight. Each name called brought whispers, suspicion, and fear. Neighbors who had shared bread yesterday now eyed each other with doubt. Families turned inward, guarding secrets that might condemn them. The girls' fits became proof, and the word bewitched became law. Rumors multiplied faster than truth could catch up. Stories of dark visions, curses, and spirits filled every corner of the village. And just like that, Salem transformed. A town built on community had become a battlefield of suspicion. Trust was gone, fear ruled, and one by one, lives were consumed. The town needed order, or at least it claimed to, so they built a court. But this was no ordinary court. Evidence wasn't facts, it wasn't witnesses, it wasn't proof, it was fear itself. The girls' accusations became law. Their visions, their fits, their screams, testimony enough to condemn a neighbor to death. Judges listened, nodded, and scribbled their notes. But the real power wasn't theirs. It was in the hands of the accusers. Once a name was spoken in the courtroom, the accused were trapped. Deny it, and you proved guilt. Confess, and you saved your life, but condemned your reputation forever. Spectral evidence, whispers, suspicion. The system devoured truth. And in this court, justice was no longer blind. It was hungry. Every decision fed the frenzy. Every sentence legitimized the terror. Salem had created a machine, and once it started, it couldn't stop. Then the first executions began. 19 people were hanged. One man was crushed under heavy stones. Each death a shockwave through the village. Some accused confessed, swallowing lies to save their lives. Others refused and faced the ultimate price. And still, the accusations didn't stop. Neighbors who had survived the first wave now feared their shadows. Families turned inward, guarding every word, every glance. Rumors of curses, secret meetings, and spectral attacks filled every room. Fear no longer whispered, it shouted. The court became a theater of terror. Every accusation a performance, every confession a warning. Salem was no longer a village, it was a trap, a nightmare people couldn't wake from. And all the while, the girls watched. The instruments of hysteria they had begun now played themselves, unstoppable. By now, no one was safe. Not the poor, not the wealthy, not even those who had supported the trials from the start. Accusations became a weapon. Families turned on each other. Friends whispered in hallways, eyes darting nervously, hearts pounding. Every word, every gesture could be twisted, every silence interpreted. Fear had spread deeper than anyone could control. The court's rulings fed the frenzy, giving legitimacy to every whisper, every rumor. Even those who had doubted before began to question their neighbors, their friends, themselves. And yet, a creeping doubt began to surface. Some whispered that the girls might have been pretending. Others wondered if fear itself had taken shape, hunting its own prey. But the momentum was unstoppable. The machinery of accusation, confession, and execution had a rhythm now, and it would continue until an external force stepped in. Salem was no longer a village. It had become a warning of what happens when fear spreads faster than reason, when suspicion overtakes trust, and when a community devours itself. Eventually, reason returned. Governor Phipps stepped in. The court was disbanded. Accusations slowed, then stopped. The frenzy, at last, exhausted itself. But the damage was done. 19 people had been hanged, one crushed under stones. Countless others ruined by shame, fear, and suspicion. Families torn apart. Neighbors who once trusted each other now left with scars that would never heal. Salem had survived, but only barely. The town that had turned on itself was forever changed. The lessons were clear. Fear, when given a voice, can grow faster than truth. When suspicion spreads unchecked, it becomes a weapon. And when a community stops trusting itself, it destroys its own foundation. History would remember Salem not for witches, not for spells, but for the darkness that lives in ordinary people when fear takes hold. And in that darkness, the most dangerous force of all revealed itself. Human fear, sharp, relentless, and unstoppable.